Hello and welcome to the back of Studio 275 where we keep lots of music for choirs, etc. This is an extra video to the ones I've been doing on composing tips, and it came about because there was a discussion on Facebook about different composing methods, and Rian, very fine organist from the Netherlands, and I had a short discussion online about the transforming of inspiration into music. And I never really thought, because writing music is a very solitary profession, that anybody would be particularly interested in how I go about it, which of course will be different to everybody else, because I think I've said before, there's no right or wrong way to go about doing this. Um, I have a great admiration for Rian because in his organ playing, it's almost the attention to detail is staggering. I sometimes almost think that when I listen to him playing, he is actually got into my head somehow and manages to convey exactly what I would do. And I also like his composing style, which is just honest and very nice, very pleasant. So this brought about this video, and I think I'm going to break it down into influences and inspiration and how I actually write in the first place. I have a thing about creating. In my house loft has a model railway which seems to expand. Well, the more space I'm allowed, the more the model railway expands. And that, of course, is creating a world of your own where maybe the imperfections that you see in the real world don't exist because you've created it yourself. It's a tiny little corner of Scotland in Yorkshire, is what it is. And as far as writing music was concerned, I was at York Minster and I was at the song school, and we had a grace which we sang before school dinners. And about the age of 8, as a precocious child, I thought, I don't like this. I could do better than this. And so I wrote what the Opus 1, I guess, a grace for school dinners. And I can't remember now because it's lost whether it was any good or not. I remember it was an A minor, and that's about all I remember from it. I think we are all influenced by other people's music. And certainly, there is on YouTube somewhere an A to Z of a playlist, A to Z of pieces of music that have inspired me. And they range from the utter melancholy that Samuel Barber can create to the vivid excitement that Jerry Goldsmith could create in the Star Trek movies, not the Star Trek series, the original Star Trek movies. And on to Gerald Finzi, who's an English composer, sadly died quite young, is a sort of continuation of what would have been an English style if he'd lived longer. And Vaughan Williams. And actually also the Great American Songbook. There's a piece of music in there called Harlem Nocturne, which I think is by Earl Hagen, not sure how to pronounce his name. But it doesn't need words because the very beauty of the music conjures up a night time in Harlem in New York. And so a vast amount of influences, um, which I'm not saying creep into my music in any of these people's styles, but it is their ability, each one of those people, to either be very cheerful, exciting in the case of Jerry Goldsmith, um, or English, very English in the case of Vaughan Williams. And if you add to that the fact that if I was writing choral music, I spent the formative years of, I don't know, 8 to 15, 8 to 14, as a choir boy in York Minster, so one of the finest cathedrals in Europe. And I don't think, even if at the time you'd rather be train spotted, I don't think you can help that the building, the music, and the repeated pattern of daily services rubs off into you and becomes part of who you are, and therefore, of course, part of the music that you write. So the Anglican choral tradition is not perhaps the most forward moving of traditions, but it contains within it some staggeringly beautiful music, which you absorb, whether at the time you understand that or not. And hence, if I'm writing choral pieces, it will be the text that inspires the music. And in fact, if I have been in the past commissioned to write pieces of music to texts that have actually led me nowhere. And because they've led me nowhere, I've been back to the commissioner and said, I don't think I'm the right composer for this. Because from the text, when you say a text, it develops a rhythm of its own. And word shaping and word painting, such as the fact that English composers like, go right back to John Dowland, and right up to Benjamin Britten, and including some fine examples per se, have a sort of an ability to word paint without being over the top. So I think as far as choral music is concerned, if the text inspires me, then I will be able to come up with a piece of music that hopefully will inspire others or make people want to sing it. But I think the main tenet of my composing has always been not to try and be something that I'm not, but to create accessible and appealing music that would have a purpose, that would probably go, hopefully, into the repertoire. Several things have gone into the repertoire now. That was sometimes aimed at certain people. A friend of mine plays the flute, and various pieces of music that I've written for her for the flute. But I think that if you're there are many times when I write things which I don't release at all, and there are big gaps between some things coming out, and sometimes inspiration is the mood that you happen to be in. Two organ pieces have just been recently released, Introspection and Psalm Prelude. And as far as introspection goes, I find it very difficult to give pieces of music titles. But that was a day or a couple of days when and we all have them, when we have what in England is often called the black dog. I'm not saying depression, but I'm saying you're inward thinking, things aren't really moving, and sometimes the only way out of that is to get it down on paper musically, and then possibly count the blessings that you have, which restores you. But I do feel sometimes, and again, like lots of English composers, we are best when melancholy, when not sad is not the word, but thoughtful, maybe. So Introspection and the solemn prelude that followed it, products of inspiration in terms of the way I happened to feel at that time. And the Regal Parade, which is a bouncy, cheerful, fine organ piece, is of course the opposite end of the spectrum, and as its name would suggest, very cheerful. So I must have been having a good day. I think also that within a very small drive from here, we have the Yorkshire Dales, we have the Yorkshire Wolds, we have the Yorkshire Moors. It's a fantastic county in which to live, so that the major cities of York and Northallerton, where I come from, and Sheffield and Scarborough, the coastline. Within this one county, we have rugged landscapes where the weather can be all the seasons of the year in an hour, to a beautiful coastline, to Roman cities, to Victorian cities. Inspiration is in actual fact all around us, and sometimes you drive. I drive here from the studio back home, and I have no recollection or whether the traffic lights were red or they were green. I mean, clearly they weren't red, otherwise I would have stopped. But an idea may just come into my head of a piece of music, and that will then germinate. I'm in no hurry to get it onto a piece of paper, and that's how I write manually on a piece of paper. They look like the scratchings of a demented man because I still use an ink pen. I am essentially old-fashioned. Um, but I'm in no hurry to start working on that piece. It will germinate in my head. Um, and I'm a big fan of the music of Healy Willan, who was an Englishman who moved to Canada. In fact, he always said he was, I might have quoted this before, English by birth, Canadian by adoption, and Scotch by absorption. But his music is so beautifully constructed uh, and counterpoint, something that people consider old fashioned. Those people that play organ works of mine, and it's actually especially noticeable in the miniatures. And the miniatures themselves, the 36 miniatures, were the byproduct of something needing to be useful. There are organists out there who don't play the pedals. There are pianists who have been asked to play the organ and 35 years later are still playing the organ. But the repertoire for them is limited. And the 36 miniatures were really quite hard to write. I mean, each one, to be fair, didn't take very long to write, but it was the fact that I wanted to display lots and lots of different ways of using the organ. So there are folk tunes. There are pieces that are clearly processionals and recessionals. There are pieces that are there for communion. But within them, they are essentially, I would hope, appealing because they're all melodic. All of them are melodic. But there are, and it's something that Rian once said to me, every note, he said, in your music seems to count. Well, yes, it does, because I have been the product earlier in my life of playing the violin and getting excited about playing string quartets rather than just playing with the violin and piano. And then being faced as a second violin with the dullest parts. I mean, really, if there was a shop nearby, you would want razor blades because some of the second violin parts in quartets by composers who are long since, I can't remember who they are, and also some of the alto lines in Victorian hymns are so dull. They're just incredibly on one note, and then you might move to another note, but then you're going to come back to the note you came from because we don't want you to wander too far. And that's taught me, if anything, and Healy Willan is a fantastic example of this, that movement in inner parts is important. It may be just a snippet. It may, on paper, not actually look that important, but of course, a good performer will find that it is important, and a good conductor will bring out, especially in choral music, things that to the singer don't actually appear to be particularly important, but actually are. The absolutely wonderful O Vos Omnes by Pablo Casals. On paper, and I've heard it, to be fair, sung so in such a way that you think, why did anybody actually bother to write this? And then you hear other people sing it and you think, this is a staggeringly beautiful piece. Just let's see why that has gone down. Sometimes, of course, pieces of music are written for commission, and then I don't tend to alter my style. I mean, I would assume that if somebody's commissioned me, they have heard something of mine, and that spurred them to choose me. And I think, I over a long composing career, I guess since the mid 80s, I've had music performed at the opening of Concert Hall in Holland, in Leiden, in the Netherlands. I've twice been composer in residence, once in Canada, once in America. Composing has taken me all over the world, and there are thousands of composers. So each time somebody sends me a message saying, "Tim, we performed this or we performed that," I'm actually truly humble because there is so much music there, and yet you chose mine. Um, what else can I say? The transformation of inspiration to actual music is in fact just the hard work of sitting down with pen and paper, in my case, and committing those thoughts, and filling in little bits here and there to make, in the end, what you consider to be a good piece. Whether anybody else considers it to be a good piece is debatable. Um, and I think, just in closing, I can't remember where I read this or where I saw this, but I did see a quote once that said, composing is an amazing journey. It's a journey that nobody else can go on with you because you don't actually even know the final destination of that journey until the piece is complete. So I'm sorry to say, I'm probably not the most exciting composer in the way I work, and I tend to not reflect too much on whether my piece of music is in sonata form or it's in this form. I do have a problem with titles, and probably my most well-known piece orchestral would be Elegy for an English Summer, because the Czech Philharmonic recorded it way back in 2006. But it was my partner Joe who came up with the title. I couldn't come up with the title, and yet when she'd said it, the passing of an English summer, that time in September, when well, it's also my birthday, but it's the sort of the season turning, the sadness for the fact that the summer has gone, but the joy of the fact that it was there at all. So yeah, titles I do have a problem with. So this is not this is a hard video for me to make, because although it may seem like I could talk forever, um, I do find talking about something probably as personal as writing music to be quite difficult. But if there's anything here that you found interesting, or you want to talk to me about in the comments, then please feel free. I would love to hear from you. So, bye bye.